So you may very well remember the 2019 general election, and one of the big campaign promises that Boris Johnson had was that he had an oven-ready deal, and that this deal was going to be amazing. It was going to be incredible. In fact, it was so good it was going to be, as he said, as the quote went, that it was oven ready. Now, of course, that essentially means is that, well, bang it in the oven and it's done, right? That's when you hear someone say that phrase, oh, it's oven ready, then you expect it to be done really quickly and really fast. However, throughout all of 2020, and I have to say, 2020 has been, well, goes without saying, a really odd year. Not only for everyone else around the world in terms of work and whatever, but in politics in general. Because in politics, this has actually stopped, and seems to have stopped, MPs from grouping up and actually chatting and talking to each other, which is a big part in politics. And the, however, this hasn't stopped the Brexiteers complaining that this deal, that the withdrawal agreement, which was again what was dressed up as the oven-ready deal, hence why Johnson was so, for it to get it through, they're now against it. And who knows what we're going to get in any way, shape or form, but it ain't going to be good in any way, shape or form. The Brexiteers are not going to be happy with it, regardless. Boris Johnson could capitulate to them everything that they want and it would still not be enough. Remember, we were at a point in history where Theresa May's soft Brexit of staying in the customs union and the single market and being really close was once, at one time, pre-referendum, was the type of Brexit Nigel Farage campaigned for and wanted, as well as all these other Brexiteers. However, they've left the European Union and now they're just pushing more and more and more. There is no appeasing these people. And this is part of the problem where we've ended up. And we've ended up with a load of other MPs who are desperate to seem to get Brexit done, because they know that if they don't do that, Boris Johnson will boot them out of the party. They will be purged from it. And here we have today the results of this, because Boris, apparently, this oven-ready deal is going to be ready by September. So this comes from the Yorkshire Bylines, and it's Johnson claims that the oven-ready deal will be ready by September. Tuesday saw the start of round 7 of talks on Britain's future relationship with the European Union. The UK and the EU have now been on negotiating on their future relationship since the 2nd of March 2020, which makes you wonder just what have they been talking about and why has there been so little progress. Part of this may well be down to the coronavirus restrictions for meeting, but undoubtedly the drive by the government to, quote, get Brexit done has led to inflexibility on the UK's part. The fact that the UK declined not to request an extension despite the coronavirus delays, which they could have done up until any point until the 30th of June, demonstrates just that. The last rounds of talks took place on the 20th to 21st of July and revealed the considerable distance between the two sides and just how deep-rooted the problems actually are. It emerged that there are 3 red lines that Boris Johnson will not cross: no role for the European Court of Justice in the UK, the right to determine future UK laws without constraints, and an agreement on fisheries that show that Brexit makes a real difference compared to the existing situation. For a Prime Minister who has done a remarkable number of U-turns in just 1 year, he has remained most notably consistent with his red lines. And I just want to go over this. People who are in the fishing industry, just because you're out of the EU and you're under these, quote, new British rules and regulations, doesn't mean it's going to be better. You are nothing to these people. You are just a real useful slogan. You've been taken for a ride by Farage and all these other people that have used you nothing more than, as a political puppet for all these years. So you know, and it's your fault because you believed them and you decided that you were going to, these people were going to be your champions. And I've always said, be careful of the people that you champion, because otherwise you'll find yourself dying on a hill all alone. And that's what the fishing industry is going to end up doing. Anyway, we continue. But as Michel Barnier noted in his press statement on the 23rd of July, there are two significant sticking points. The guarantees for a level playing field included on state aids and standards, and a long-term solution for fisheries. The level playing field issue is of high significance for the success of any future trade deals. A House of Commons briefings explains that the purpose of a level playing field commits in trade agreements to ensure that the competition is open and fair, and that business in one trading partner do not gain a competitive advantage and undercut their rivals from the other. The EU's concern remains that the UK wants access to the single market, but could undercut it and gain an unfair advantage through lowering standards or paying lower wages. The other issue is around fishing. It doesn't seem rather strange that an industry that accounts for just less than 0.1% of the UK's economy is something that the government is willing to die in a ditch for. But it symbolises the entire thrust of the Take Back Control, Leave campaign narrative. Johnson wants to ensure that the UK as an island has control over its own waters and what's in them. Barnier, by contrast, says that common stock need to be managed jointly and according to international law and the principle and responsibility and sustainable management of resources. And he's completely right there. Look, fish do not respect international borders. I think we can agree on that, and that because this fish are a resource that we all share, despite whose waters they just happen to be in, there should be an international solution on this. And the fact that Johnson wants to leave what is, by and all, quite a good solution, the problem was, and always was that the fishermen voted for Nigel Farage, and he was their representative every time that this came up, and Farage did not go to bat for the British fishing industry in these meetings, and as a result the British fishing industry has suffered, because even though Nigel Farage was the flag-waving champion of the British industry, he was all bark and no bite. He never did anything for the British fishing industry, which is the that's the story. That should be a story. I really wish there'd be a journalist out there who'd just go and write a story of just how little Farage has actually done for the British fishing industry, and how much he's probably actually harmed it, not only since he's been campaigning for it, but even in the long run post-Brexit. Because I'll tell you what, I haven't heard a peep from Nigel Farage about the British fishing industry probably since the referendum. So trust is not a high premium between the two sides as they began the latest rounds of talks. As the UK in charge of Europe, in a changing Europe, noted in its recent briefing, the EU is monitoring the UK's compliance with obligations it signed up to under the withdrawal agreement. Although not legally binding, the political declaration has the status of an international treaty and was signed by the Prime Minister Johnson on the 17th of October last year. It sets the direction of the current negotiations, the monitoring, among other things, and a commitment to an ambitious trading relationship on the basis of free trade agreement and, as the Institute for Government explains, deep regulatory and customs cooperation and a level playing field for fair competition. Little wonder that there is trust in that being eroded, with the Telegraph reporting that Johnson won't be bound by the political declaration, alongside reports of senior figures in the Tory party, Ian Duncan-Smith and David Davis, now turning their fire on the withdrawal agreement despite having voted for it. Last night the chief negotiator went for dinner, presumably social distance. Today at 10 p.m. they started to talk Turkey, or rather the level playing field. If negotiations are frosty as the last rounds, they probably won't need reminding of social distancing rules. Number 10 remains upbeat, claiming that a deal can be done by September, with the government continuing to work at ways to, quote, plug in the gaps in the potential deal. Brexiteers are less sanguine, according to the Express, however, claiming that the EU is failing to treat the UK as an independent sovereign nation by continuing to demand that the UK follows EU standards in return for continued access to the single market. Either way, something has to give. Shadow Brexit Minister Paul Blumford told the BBC on Monday that the Prime Minister has a very hands-off approach and really needs to get a grip on the process. There's not much time to sign. There's not much sign of the oven-ready deal we were promised last year, says Blumford. And if we do reach October without that agreement, or with a suboptimal agreement, then the economic impact on top of the difficulties we are going to face with the coronavirus is going to be very serious for jobs and the economy. As a reminder, last year Johnson promised us a tariff and barrier-free trade, protection for workers, rights and environments. Indeed, the Conservative manifesto stated that the deal was as good as done and claimed that Brexit would be concluded by January. The manifesto also said, in parallel, we will legislate to ensure high standards of workers' rights, environmental protections and consumer rights. No wonder Barnier and his team are confused. Still, a week is a long time in politics, and Boris Johnson has on past form on the U-turns, with the A-levels, the track and tracing, the free school meals, the NHS surcharge, bereavement service, remote voting, all that just in a recent list. There is time for another significant turn here. The government is undoubtedly bruised at the moment, and quite rightly so. But many expect this set of talks to be yet another round of shadowboxing, with the real punches being thrown in September. Whatever happens, this is still the case for who blinks first, and Johnson is just mad enough to cut his eyelids off first. That's the situation we're in. And this is why, it is a very good idea for Johnson, for Starmer, just to keep stum about all this, because then all of Brexit gets placed onto Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party and all these Brexiteers. It's their fault. They're the ones in charge. They're the ones with the 80-seat majority. There's nothing stopping them. All this failure of Brexit is going to be their fault. And trust me, Brexit is on course for an absolutely spectacular failure. And it is going to cost us jobs and our economy. Remember, we're still the only country that's currently in a recession. Do you think we're going to have another recession because of a no-deal Brexit? That's potentially what's going to happen, and it's going to be an absolute disaster. And the blame rightly needs to fall right at the feet of the Brexiteers.